Alright, so I wanted to talk about objectivity because I feel like objectivity is a concept that is losing its importance in society today. And I think that's a really scary prospect because that means that we're just living in a world of subjective interpretations. And if you don't think that's scary, just try to remember the sheer pandemonium that we all experienced when we couldn't decide if the dress was white and gold or black and blue, or if that weird, creepy, robotic voice was saying Yanny or Laurel. Okay, we were ready to go to war with each other over this. And from today until my dying day, I will assert that that dress was white and gold, and that weird, creepy, robotic voice was saying Yanny. Okay, I will die on this hill. Okay, I'm joking, but I'm not. But I'm joking. But that's why I think objectivity is so important, because it unites us under this shared reality. One that just can't be denied. You know, 1 + 1 = 2. Human beings breathe oxygen. These are just irrefutable facts that don't care about our subjective interpretations. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter what your experiences are. It doesn't matter who influenced you. None of those things can change these facts. But anyway, more specifically, I wanted to talk about objectivity in art because I recently had a very spirited discussion about the topic with somebody online. No, it wasn't an argument, okay? We were just enthusiastically going back and forth, presenting our ideas somewhat aggressively. Okay, it was an argument, but that's not important. What's important is that they claim that all art is subjective. From its inception to our reception, everything along that path is subjective. And whether it's good or bad depends purely on whether we liked or disliked it. And I disagree. Now, I do want to clarify that this is just my opinion on the matter, but I don't say that to protect what I'm about to say from any type of scrutiny. I know a lot of times people will put out their opinion and it'll generate backlash, and then people will use the "it's just my opinion" defense as if to imply that opinions can't be wrong. And that's not true. Opinions are wrong all the time. And my opinion right now that I'm about to share could be wrong. And if I'm presented with compelling evidence to the contrary of what I'm about to say, then I'm responsible for being able to accept that evidence and go back and adjust my opinion. Again, if I'm wrong, which is very much a possibility. But obviously, I don't think I'm wrong, which is why I'm about to share this opinion anyway. But obviously, because I said I disagree, my opinion is that art can be objectively good or bad. And then whether you like it or dislike it is obviously subjective. And the reason I think this is a discussion that even needs to be had is because I think we've gotten into the habit of conflating our likes and dislikes with something being good or bad. Basically, we'll say, well, if I liked it, it was good. And if I didn't like it, it was bad. I watch a lot of YouTube review channels that do this. You know, if they liked a certain video game or TV show or movie, they will very eloquently express all the details of that piece of art that made it good. And if they thought it was bad, they'll do the exact opposite. But that's usually where the review will end. But again, liking something is subjective, and no one can or should be able to take that away. But when you're talking about whether something is good or bad, I think that's an entirely separate conversation altogether. And you begin to enter the realm of objectivity. And so the question becomes, okay, so how do you measure whether a piece of art is good or bad? And I think the first thing you have to do is identify what that piece of art wanted to do, what message it wanted to deliver, what feelings it wanted to convey, what themes it wanted to represent, etc. And then from there, you can gauge what specific elements of that piece of art contributed to that message, to that theme, to those feelings. And you can gauge what elements detracted from those things. And then you can say, well, if the majority of these elements contributed to this piece of art achieving its original objective, then yeah, it's a pretty good movie. And vice versa. If the majority of them didn't, then I'm sorry, but no, it's not that great. And one of the added benefits of using this approach to review pieces of art is that this allows you to have a more comprehensive view of what you just experienced. Because good movies can have bad elements and bad movies can have good elements. And now you can look at a good movie and say, well, actually the dialogue was a little bit off and the pacing was a little bit too slow, but overall it was still a good movie. And you can look at a bad movie and say, well, yeah, it didn't really achieve its initial goals, but the fight choreography was really good, or the dialogue was spot on. And yeah, you just allow yourself to have a much more accurate representation of whatever it is you just consumed that isn't really clouded by the feeling of whether you liked it or disliked it. And I guess you can say that that's a little bit more of an unbiased view. It allows you to address that bias and look past it. And I just want to be very clear, this is not my idea. I am not presenting anything new here. Critics and reviewers have been doing this for a long time. I've mentioned before how this channel called Girlfriend Reviews is one of my favorite favorite channels on YouTube. And one of the reasons is because I believe they take this approach to their reviews. So there's this game called The Last of Us 2. And this game might be the most divisive video game ever. Okay, this game is basically the video game version of The Last Jedi. Now, obviously, it's very divisive because there is a lot of dislike for this game. So after it came out, Girlfriend Reviews puts out this video called Understanding The Last of Us 2. And in it, they do everything that I'm talking about here. They go through the game and they try to identify what the developers wanted the players to think and to feel as they played through the game, and also what message they wanted to deliver at the game's conclusion. Now, like I said, this was a very divisive game, and so even the fact that they chose to review the game like this garnered a lot of hate. And they talk about in one of their other videos how this video ended up being one of their most disliked videos on their channel. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, they talk about in another one of their videos how the game's director retweeted this video that they made. And that makes sense to me, because if you were a director and you poured all this effort into making this type of game, it must be very validating to see somebody attempt to decipher what it is you were trying to do with the game and whether you achieved what you were trying to do. And so that was a very objective look at the video game. And in that review, they came to their own conclusions about whether or not the developers achieved the goals that they set out to achieve. Now, after they made this video, they made another video on the game called Reviewing The Last of Us 2. And this was a much more subjective look at the game. They talked about what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, the parts that didn't make sense, the parts that were boring and incongruent with the story's narrative. And yeah, subjectively, there were a few things that they would say just weren't very good about the game. And so yeah, I just give this example to show that there are already critics and reviewers who review artistic content in the way that I'm describing. And so all I'm trying to do is throw the non-existent weight of my opinion behind this method of review to show that, yeah, art can be viewed objectively. I don't think it's a purely subjective process from inception to reception. I think there are objective elements in each piece of art that make it good or bad. And just to be very clear, objectivity doesn't necessitate you liking or disliking a piece of art. To be perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino. I don't know, his movies have just never really struck a chord with me. But I could never argue that they're objectively bad. I mean, the way he writes dialogue is objectively good. The timing, the flow, the subtext, the believability, the intonation, the delivery, it's all consistent. And his characters all convey the message that they were created to convey. I just don't always agree with the message, if that makes sense. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's this movie called Mortal Engines that I really like, but from a narrative standpoint is not very good. I really enjoyed how ambitious the world was. I really enjoyed the message that it was trying to convey, but I don't think it did a very good job of introducing new viewers into the world. It was very two-dimensional. There were characters that we're supposed to care about that they didn't spend any time developing any emotional connection to, and I could go on. The point is, I really like the movie, but it's an objectively not very well told story. Anyway, my point is just that I believe that objectivity exists and that it is important, especially in art. I just think that a movie like Christopher Nolan's Inception exists where it does in the zeitgeist of movie reception, and a movie like Tommy Wiseau's The Room exists where it does in the same zeitgeist, and that the reason that there's a difference between where they exist is not one that is purely subjective. It's not because we like one and we dislike the other. I think there are so many identifiable objective metrics in the middle that more accurately describe why one movie is good and one movie is bad. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for this one. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching. Again, this is all my opinion. And again, I don't say that to claim infallibility. Opinions can be wrong, and this opinion could also be very wrong. I just say that to clarify that I'm not presenting all of this as fact. I believe it is, and maybe one day it will be viewed as fact. But for now, this is a very hotly debated topic, and so these are just my 2 cents. But yeah, thank you for indulging me. And with that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.